What is going on, everybody? My name is LJ Bowens. I am the director of the Southeast Regional North Carolina Poetry Festival, or the SERNC for short. If you see me stuttering, it's because it's been a long week, but it's been a great week. We have kicked this festival off. It has been some phenomenal voices coming on here, and I'm not going to try to keep too much of y'all time because this is Super Saturday, which means that we have a lot of events going on. But we definitely had a great kickoff open mic, which then went the next day to the LGBTQ open mic, which then last night we had a fantastic nerd open mic. And today, like I said, it's Super Saturday. So we're kicking this off with two major events going on. First, we're going to do what we have not done in a long time, which is a panel for When Worlds Collide, which is a youth adult slam panel. And we got some fantastic people that's going to be speaking on that. And then following up after that, around 1:15 will be our youth open mic. So for everybody that has not got a chance to, best way to keep in touch with all this stuff, you can use the hashtags or look at the hashtags SERNC 2020 or SERNC Poetry Festival. Once again, to share the experience, use the hashtags SERNC 2020 or SERNC Poetry Festival. And if you do not want to retract through all these Facebook Live videos to catch everything that happened, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Southeastern Regional North Carolina Poetry Festival. Once again, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Southeast Regional North Carolina Poetry Festival. And without further ado, guys, I'm going to get off of this, and we're about to go right into When Worlds Collide, youth/adult slam panel, moderated by Mr. Dasan Ahanu. So stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dasan Ahanu, and I'm excited to be your moderator for When Worlds Collide, this youth adult poetry slam panel. And we have three amazing panelists that are going to be a part of this conversation. So without further ado, I want to bring them on and let you know who they are so we can jump right into this conversation. Once again, I want to thank LJ and the Southeast Regional North Carolina Poetry Festival for this opportunity. This is an amazing festival, and I'm so glad that it was able to happen, even under these conditions. And I think everyone across the state is also happy, considering the proclamations that have happened that highlight how relevant and how necessary having this outlet is right now. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists to you. So first off is Ebony Payne English, who is a poet, performer, and educator from Jacksonville, Florida. She is author of the award-winning poetry collection Secrets of Mott, graphic novel The Random Happenings, and the critically acclaimed play On Purpose. Ebony currently serves as managing director of the Performers Academy, a conservatory for foster teens in Duval County. She is light and beauty personified. Ebony, what's going on?
Peace and light. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Also, we have Matthew Cuban Hernandez, who is a poet, MC, speaker, and performance coach from Jacksonville, Florida. He's toured as far as Abu Dhabi and nearly every major city in the United States and Europe, performing, teaching, and coaching poetry. Teaching artist for nearly 10 years, Matthew spent the last 6 years working with youth detention centers across Los Angeles County, currently serving as the director of camp programming for Streets Poets Incorporated. He's also the lead teacher and co-founder of Spoken Literature Art Movement. Cuban, what's going on, good sir?
What's good? How y'all doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Cuban is also one of the loveliest top five in the world.
Go on.
And then we also have Joel Mayo, who's an educator, poet, and youth slam team coach from Fayetteville, North Carolina, teacher at Grays Creek High School. He co-founded and coaches Poetic Pathos Youth Slam, the city's first youth slam team, with recently announced Cumberland County Schools Teacher of the Year, Nicole Rivers. And recently, it's important, y'all, he took Poetic Pathos to the Brave New Voices International Youth Poetry Festival for the second time, where they not only became the first team in North Carolina to make finals, but ranked third overall. So y'all, please welcome Joel to the conversation.
It's lit,
What's up,
it's
everyone?
lit.
Yes. We definitely got to celebrate that. That is beautiful. I loved it. I was getting to play by LJ was making sure to give everybody a play-by-play as y'all were making that happen. Y'all, I'm so glad to be able to have this conversation with y'all. And I think I want to start before we get too far into this by just kind of grounding us in how did you get brought to and introduced to slam? I know it's going to be different for each one of you, but how did you end up in this world of slam? So whoever would like to start, and we'll go from there. How did this happen for you?
Well, I know for me, Black on Black Rhyme, Keith Rogers introduced me to slam poetry. I had never seen anything like it. My first slam festival was Southern Fried. My first time seeing a poetry slam was Southern Fried. So that after that, I was sold. That was it. I was a goner.
Wow. Yeah. For those that don't know, Southern Fried is the Southeast Regional Poetry Slam. It's the largest regional poetry slam in the country, and it's dedicated to the Southeast. That's an amazing first time to see to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Miami.
Man,
When Cuban couldn't get in the finals, even though he made finals, he was too young.
that was a good year. That was
Yeah.
a good year. That was my first Southern Fried as well. I was 15.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I stumbled upon slam. Yeah, definitely like on a large organized scale for sure. Southern Fried. I mean, if you want to call it organized at the time, but it was a beautiful thing. I think I stumbled into slam poetry through some poetry group in Jacksonville called Verbal Inc. There was like a handful of poets there, just that were kind of taking a group and going to slamming, and they had lost recently to a group in Tampa that had like a 13-year-old poet, and they were like, cool, we're gonna get you, you're gonna be our 15-year-old poet, and we're gonna compete. So the first time I got introduced to slam, it was being used. All right, you know what I'm saying? The rest of my career.
It was your calling, though, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And Joel?
So my experience is a little bit different. I got started into slam as a teacher. It was back in 2013. Nicole Rivers and I were we were co-teachers together teaching English 1. And we were trying to figure out a way to get students interested in poetry, because our normal poetry unit was just that basic, all right, let's write some poetry, study the classics, trying to get the kids involved, but it just was not clicking, unfortunately. So Nicole found this documentary, Louder Than a Bomb, based on Chicago youth authors or young Chicago authors competition. And we showed it to the students, and we kind of built a unit around that. And next thing you know, the kids got extremely excited about poetry, got extremely excited about spoken word and slam. We created a whole project on that, and then they came up to me and were like, hey, Mr. Mayo, can we start a poetry club and a slam team and go to Louder Than a Bomb? And I don't really think they knew the extent of what it takes to do all that, but we kind of just said, let's do it, let's try it out, let's start a slam team so we can do local. And thankfully it kind of grew into what it is today, and we became Poetic Pathos Youth Slam, trying to bring it up to all of Cumberland County, Fayetteville area, and went to Brave New Voices. The rest is history, thankfully.
Man, that's amazing, and I think that's wonderful. That I just wanted to kind of just start this conversation by benchmarking that journey. So then I want to ask, and Ebony, you talked a little bit about this by mentioning Keith Rogers and Black on Black Rhyme. Shout out to Keith and Black on Black Rhyme, and everybody, all our family. But who are some of the folks to kind of guide you on this journey that you can kind of felt mentored by or coached by or kind of helped you along the way that you can kind of go to and be like, yo, I need to talk about this, I need some help or some guidance? Like, who are those folks?
It's funny that you asked that because two of them you know very well. Matthew Cuban Hernandez is the best slam coach I've ever had in my life. He's got the golden gift of slam. Like that was his calling. He was a 15-year-old poet, but they did right. They did a good thing. I really do think so. So having him in Jacksonville and like coming up and that being my slam community, it had such an impactful just like collision on my life. Like we slammed into each other, literally and figuratively speaking. And like it was iron sharpens iron. So like that was like definitely a formative time in my career when he was my coach. And then Blues from Slam Charlotte. The first time I ever dropped a poem on stage, it was finals, Southern Fried finals. And I think Atlanta, we were in Atlanta, and it was me, Blues, Flo Diva, and Stephen Miko. And I dropped my poem. The first time I ever dropped a poem ever was on stage at finals. And like it was because Blues had been my like mentor, my poetry, my slam mentor. And I looked up to him so much, and I was so freaking nervous. I couldn't get over myself. And it's like a testament to how great he really is. He's incredible. And like having those two people as a strong influence, and then pairing that with like my creative influences, such as Queen Sheba and Sonny Patterson, like that kind of like made me who I am as a poet, just being around those kind of people and that energy.
Mm-hmm. Ashe.
Yeah, those are nothing but like
straight flame.
Yeah, all the
straight flame.
All right.
That first guy you mentioned, I don't know about him.
whatever, Cuban. So Joel, who's been some folks that have kind of been there to help you out?
The first one I have to definitely give a shout out to is Marshall North Star Panther. He was back here in Fayetteville. He's the one who really kind of opened us up to the poetry community. And then he gave us our first avenue, gave the kids their first opportunity to perform in front of a live crowd. So he definitely helped kind of jumpstart our journey. And then LJ, Mr. Director himself, he definitely has been not only a huge support, but just giving me advice and workshopping with the kids whenever he could, giving them advice as much as possible. Then I would say all the other coaches in the youth slam scene for Brave New Voices from North Carolina, people like Jay Ward, Jay Reach, Josephus, all the people from Asheville, Greensboro, Charlotte, just everybody's just been a big help and supporting us as well.
Yeah. One of the things I think is really, I think really good is just the intentionality that the youth coaches across North Carolina have had in, trying to be connected and be supportive of each other. I think that's something I've watched and have really, really appreciated. Cuban, about you?
Yeah, Dasan, it's something you watched, appreciated, and cultivated. So, you know what I'm saying? You great flowers as well. And yes. Joel, what a beautiful tribute to this scene that is the Carolinas, because my goodness, I mean, since I was coming up in the game, I've always known like that's like the Harvard rowing crew up there. You know what I'm saying? They take it seriously. So man,
they do this.
For real. And Ebony took me to the gun because I mean, when I was a young jit, the first ever dope great poet I ever ran into was Ebony. You know what I'm saying? And we I think Ebony, you were one of the first poets I ever saw that had a CD that had product that was really like pushing themselves. And when I was kind of coming up, I had a group of poets, like I mentioned, that group Verbal Link, and we were kind of doing a thing. It was kind of, I keep coming back to the idea when I was posed this question, like, what is a mentor? You know what I'm saying? What is this? Like, I had a lot of people that like fit parts of this category, and then in other categories, not so much. But I think the biggest mentoring place I had was a whole entire community, which was Southern Fried. I mean, I've been going to that festival since I was 15. I met people like Dasan, Ebony, 13 of Nazareth, CPAs, Blues, you know what I'm saying, Asia Sampson, I mean, Liz Straight, Sonia Thomas, you name them. These are contemporaries, but these are also people who knew that I was the young person in the game, and they refused for me to ever have an ego. So
period. You suck.
They refused. I'm still traumatized. I'm still it balanced out with some heavy imposter syndrome that they've given me. But you know, I think that was this community, and what Ebony said is true. Steel sharpens steel, and just my Jacksonville community, I have to give, I would say, the most credit to, because, you know, we were all kind of parentless children in the creative scene, so to
wandering.
You know what I'm saying? We didn't have a thriving poetry scene in Jacksonville at the time. It was kind of just us, and, you know, people like Ebony, people like Moses West, people like Rod, people like, you know, Nocturnal Escape, and that was making things happen. So we had a space to do it. Shouts out to the Ritz La Villa, you know, the first place in Jacksonville that I performed. So all these communities, this village, is really what raised me and mentored me.
The village, for better or for worse, you know, the village is so critical and so important. And so I'd like to take a moment to talk about just off of all of your experiences when thinking about, let's start with thinking about youth poets, because y'all are all amazing. You know, y'all have been amazing with working and empowering and supporting and nurturing these young folks. What does that village look like, and what are some of the challenges that come with helping to give them that village and help them to hold that village? And what are some of the beautiful benefits that you've seen that's happening from being able to offer them that village? So yeah, anybody who would like to chime in.
I could jump in on it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think some of the struggles are this idea that, like, when I think a lot of us got started in the game, there wasn't like a career you could have in poetry. It was like, you know what I'm saying? I'm cutting these sandwiches at Subway, and then I go do my little poetry at night. You know? That's cool. And I think now it's like people are very, very clear. You like, you know, oh, I can have a successful career. And I think some of the biggest struggle is youth that want to come into it for the success of it and for the glitz and glamour, but don't necessarily see the work in it. And I think that's really surface level too. You know what I'm saying? That's right. Like, really not even that big of a thing. But I think sometimes we get caught up in the success of winning a slam or publishing a book or being a poet on Instagram. And, you know what I'm saying? I think that becomes a very surface level thing that I think all youth are in this process of struggling with. Like, everybody wants to be like depressed and rich rapper. I don't know. But that's the vibe, right? But the successes are what really like counterbalance those things, which is like the healing elements in what poetry can offer. And I think there's so many young people that don't understand or don't realize the traumas or the things that they're carrying along until they get an opportunity to write and speak it out, you know? And so to me, the biggest plus that comes with working with youth is like knowing that like some of the trauma that you've dealt with isn't going to get reciprocated or put onto another person or to another generation. There's just a little bit of it that gets to get chiseled away. So yeah, I think that benefit is like, man, you slightly might become a better person and not screw up other people. I'm also wasn't sure if I could cuss or not, so I decided not to in that.
Good job. All right. Anyone else want to add to that?
I know for like Fayetteville, it's just been a struggle to kind of get the word out to the youth that this is a thing and that they have all these opportunities from it. Like, we've been a thing really since 2014. But it wasn't really until like the past year or so And I think a lot of that comes with myself and Nicole doing professional development and reaching out to the teachers and trying to get the teachers, reaching out to the students. But I think, yeah, just a lot of kids here just don't know that, you know, they don't necessarily know what spoken word is, or they don't know that they can participate in slams, and they don't know that we have a youth poetry scene that's really been here for, you know, the past several years. So I think just kind of opening up that world to them, and hopefully with like our radio voices success, and then being in the media and all that and stuff like this, it's gonna, and even like with a spoken word artist winning America's Got Talent, that they're gonna, you know, the kids are gonna be like, oh my God, this is a thing. You can be successful. You don't have to just be a singer, rapper. Like, you can take the stuff that you write, turn it into something great. Yeah, and I think just my ultimate goal too is just, you know, bringing all these youth together, creating this community. Because I think like Fayetteville, we're really kind of segregated, sadly, and I think just bringing, you know, kids from the north of Cumberland County into the south, just, I don't know, big goals.
Yeah, it's gonna be important. Ebony, did you have anything you wanted?
Well, I was gonna say, as far as like some of the drawbacks from it, like when you're talking about a youth-centered poetry environment, especially a competitive one, is that losing sucks. Like, it does. And just because they're children doesn't mean that it sucks any less for them. And the fact of the matter is, there is rejection. Rejection happens a lot in life, right? And losing a poetry slam feels a lot like rejection. Poems are very personal pieces of art, right? And it's like, I just put my life, my whole heart on the table, and 5 strangers, right, gave me a failing grade.
After I worked so hard for it.
I practiced all summer. I spent my entire summer doing this, okay? And I lost. And my coach is talking some shit. The points is the poetry. And, oh, my bad. Like, something about the points, you know? But I feel a lot like I've been rejected. I feel like cheated, because I feel like my poem was better than the people's poems that won. And I feel bad. I feel hurt. And I feel vulnerable. And people are watching.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And those moments happen frequently, especially if it's slam season. And it's hard. It's hard to be the teacher in that situation. It's hard to be that responsible adult that's supposed to say the right thing. Because I don't like to lose neither.
Because you agree with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, straight up. It's like, yeah.
So I'm still trying to figure that one out, you know? But it's a risk worth taking, I would say. Not knowing the right thing to say when we lose a slam is nowhere near as like important as having the exact thing to say when they write that poem. Or to get them to write that poem in the first place. And if the concept of competitive sport like is what excites them and intrigues young people who are full of competitive energy, you know, then I'll go for it. I'm all for it, and I'm willing to put myself in that position. And furthermore, they're brave enough to put themselves in that position without a second thought. You know, it doesn't occur to them that they could lose until we lose, and then it's like, oh God. So that says a testament to the courage of young people. Public speaking is like a very common fear that's been a fear for the longest of time. Since there are people who are afraid to speak in front of people, and these young people on these major platforms put it all on the line, and that's a lot. It's a lot being a poetry coach.
Yeah, I know my poets have. Yeah, you're so right. That is so important, and the look on their faces when you're giving them the speech after, and they're like, you know, you give them your best, you know what I'm saying, critical TV moment, like, inspirational like thing, and then just like, yeah, okay. Yeah.
That's why I always tell my kids they lost when we actually won. I don't let them see the scores. I'm like, y'all did good, you lost.
Yeah.
And then when we actually lose, they're like, so we won, right? Like, no, we really lost. I earned that one today.
But it is there's a lot of negotiation, and I think what gets overlooked by folks who, you know, love the young folks and want to work with them is that they don't take into consideration that level of negotiation, and that you're always learning. You have to be adaptable. You can't, that rigid sense of how it's supposed to go is not going to serve you well, because it's just not how it's going to play out. You know, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, that I talk about a lot, that I bring up a lot, and I don't know whether you have seen this, with two things. First thing is I think, Cuban, you alluded to this, is that the art, once you open the door, poetry is not going to be like, I want like, give me that thing that you got sitting on the coffee table. They're going to be like, no, I want everything in the house. You know, like, it's not selective in what it comes and grabs for. It's like, there's something there that I see and I found, we want all of it. And that can be difficult, because we've all been in a situation where there are things that haven't been addressed till we created the space where folks felt comfortable and trusting enough to go there and give that thing up. And we get to find out things and hear about things that folks' parents, like nobody else has heard. And that's that thing that I don't think anybody's prepared for before you walk in to coach or teach or hold a poetry workshop or hold space for the club. And I don't know that you can ever be prepared for it. I tell people it's going to happen, but I don't know. You don't know. But like, talk a little bit about what it means to be the person who's both given them that space, but then what it means to be in that space and to try to figure out how to help them work through that level of vulnerability and openness.
Yeah. I don't know if that was directed towards me. I'm gonna jump in. I'm already talking. Yeah, that's the trickiest thing. And honestly, like, it's taken like over a decade to like understand healthy ways of doing that. I think originally when I think anybody that teaches or coaches, you probably just got a good heart, because you ain't doing it for the money. So, you know, but with having that good heart, I think often comes with like a ton of self-sacrifice, which is just not a healthy way to do anything. And I think it took me years to understand like secondary trauma, vicarious trauma, what those things are, and how I can protect myself from it, how I can operate in it. I see a lot of coaches burning themselves out. I see a lot of coaches not understanding the delicacy of navigating a young person's trauma, or helping that young person navigate their trauma. And apparently Alexa wants to tell me the weather today, in the middle of what's happening. Thank you, Alexa. Appreciate it. Anyways, that was a commercial for the moment.
Fancy.
Yeah, get an Alexa, get a Buick. What? I don't know. All right. And so I think sometimes, you know, it's not. I think I see a lot of coaches that are just like, put it all out there. Like, that happened, give it every detail. And it's like there is a space for that, and that you know, there is something that's codified and really dope. But I think more often than not, like, it's just like, not everything needs to be shared in front of like 100 strangers. You know what I mean? Some things are like, cool, let's I'm glad we processed that. Like, how can we use poetic device to like help you not feel so exposed when you put these things out there. So I think that there's little tricks of the trade that can do it on that aspect. But I think as far as like teacher to student, it's difficult. You know, we talk about creating safe spaces, and like I can't create a safe space by myself. Like no one of us can just be like, it's a safe space now because like we're like, that doesn't make a safe space. Like it takes every person and a commitment from every person to say, okay, we're gonna create this safe space. So it's a detailed and weighted question, but I think ultimately the biggest thing that I see is that like I just know that there's so many adults who jump into this because there's a need, because it's not happening in their city, because there's no youth programming, because poetry is not a fashionable thing, because it's not funded heavily in the cities that we live in the communities that we come from. And so we put our all selves out there because we were those kids once and we didn't have a competent adult, and we're trying our best to be that competent adult while sacrificing every aspect of ourselves. And that's how you get people coaching for a year or 2 years and then they're done. And it's ends up becoming something that's not ultimately healthy in the long run for anybody. But sorry, that was a long-winded answer that Alexa did a group piece with.
No, anybody else have thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that therapy is a thing that is often not a commonality amongst the students that I deal with, because most of the students I deal with are either at or below the poverty line or attending Title I schools. And that's just, they're not therapists in most of those schools. That was just not the case or the situation. And so the poetry became a place to put their trauma. But like the issue is, what Cuban was saying is that the world is not a safe space. It's just not. And my kids in particular, when working with foster youth or wards of the state, the environments that they go back to are only reinforcing the trauma that they've already encountered. Every time they have to move unexpectedly, every time they have to leave the home because they're not allowed to be there by themselves when their foster parents are at work, or every time, they have to fill out paperwork and they say, take that home to your mom to sign, they're being reminded of that very thing that's at times like literally eating them alive. And so it would be a disservice to them for me to tell them, this is safe, right? What I try to do is equip them with tools that can help them be safe in an unsafe environment. So like helping coping mechanisms, that's a tool, right? For unsafe environments. Okay, let's find out what's good for you to process without hurting yourself or others. Like things like that. Because what happens is when you enter the competitive nature of slam poetry into an environment that the youth has believed to be safe, right? And they are writing things about unsafe realities. That's what I mean by like losing is a little different than like losing like at a game of baseball. I wrote about how I was abused as a child, and I really got free on stage. This is like the first time I was able to talk about it and get through it without breaking down. And I got through it and I did great. And some stranger in the audience gave me a 7.2. And now it's not about me losing, it's about me feeling like my feelings are once again invalidated. And so like, what's a healthy coping mechanism? Well, I understand and acknowledge that although this is a competition, the work that you're putting up there is not to be compared with anyone else's, because no one can tell your story but you, right? So the focal point is your story. This is a platform that empowers young people to tell their stories. It is competitive in nature, but what you are doing is telling a story. And so that's when it really doesn't matter. The points, that's the speech they don't want to hear at the time, but it's important to keep in mind through the practicing so that they're able to get this stuff off their chest, without the expectation that now that you've said the thing, now that you've called the thing, it doesn't mean that the world is going to become safer around you. Now that you identify the things that are unsafe about your environment, okay? It just means that you're more aware of yourself and how you're dealing, and how are you feeling throughout it, and what's happening within you throughout it. So I think equipment, and I think therapy is a tool. Having a therapist is a tool to help you be safe in this unsafe place. And so I do partner with therapists with my program, so that kids have access to a therapist, and their guardians or parents have access to a family therapist. They want to go and figure out what's going on with their young person, because sometimes the poems are just not enough. And that's a poor expectation to set for your children, that sometimes, the poems are going to always be enough. No, they're not. No, they're not. And depending on the right poem, it could just make it worse. So that's what I would refer to that long-winded Alexa Cuban Ebony Payne English team piece.
No, that's powerful. Joel, did you have anything before we move on?
I just know it's definitely hard. I mean, everything you guys said for sure. This past summer, we kept stressing to our kids, like, do not sacrifice your mental health for the points, because it ultimately doesn't matter. Like, your art's important, your voice is important, but if you are choosing this piece because you know it's going to win the crowd over, or you know it's going to connect people, don't do it at the sacrifice of your own sanity, your own mental health, your own emotions. We had two poets, for instance. One did a piece about the sexual abuse that she's pretty much gone through up until like last year. And she cried every single time she did this piece. And we just kept saying, like, you don't have to do this piece. Like, we're so proud of you, and we're here to support you. But it's difficult, of course, virtually, because all we can really give is those virtual hugs right now. But I hope that she's okay still. And I hope that, like, doing this kind of brought some closure or brought some acceptance to it. But just as a coach, you fear that it is, hurting them even more than really they let you on and let you know. And we had another student who did a poem about a friend who committed suicide back in March. And I was right there grieving with that student the week it happened. Next thing you know, COVID happened like that week. And then we stopped seeing each other up until the summer virtually. And she wrote a poem about it. And once again, cried every single time she performed it. I was right there crying with her. So just, you become so involved with these kids. It's definitely a struggle, but I feel like it's the purpose. It's part of what we can do. But like you said, I mean, we don't want to sacrifice ourselves. It's hard though. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah. It's so tough. I have an opportunity sometimes to be in spaces with service providers, who do work with youth. And I constantly tell them, I would love it if y'all were aware, if not aware of who the teaching artists in your community are, aware of the spaces where teaching artists are invited into. Yeah. Because it's a point that gets overlooked in terms of where the things that you are equipped to help them with come out. And by the time it gets to your attention, it might have come out with us months before, because we're the only space that they're willing to share that. And by the time they get to a place, we've done what we can, but there's still maybe time before you find out about it. And and they're always like, huh? And I'm like, I just need y'all to know what happens when they're with us. And if we're able to do what we do, which is build that trust and encourage them and give them that craft and allow them to express themselves, the things that they're willing to talk about, it's beautiful and it's amazing, but it also is trauma informed and trauma filled. And like, I would love it if y'all were there when we there, because when we leave, we don't know who else is equipped to hold any of that. So yeah, that's a really now one of the other things is, and Ebony, I'm glad you mentioned about the therapist and the poems not being enough and sometimes can make it worse, is to have that reality and know that, and to contrast it with the fact there are so many adults running around talking about poetry as therapy.
Yes.
And I'm like, I cringe whenever I hear that, because it sends a message that you then have to counteract on the other end, because you got young poets looking up to poets and they're like, no, this poem is all I need. It's like,
until it's not.
Right.
Until it's not. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I think that when we talk about youth and adult, that we have to be mindful of, is when you look up, like if you create a pathway for them to continue to be a part of a community that they can grow into, there's messages being sent back that are really, really not helpful.
Yeah.
About the way that the adult poets are navigating and navigating their own life, their own trauma. They're just not helpful at all. I don't know if y'all want to speak to that, you know what I'm saying? Because I feel like we should have a real conversation, but there's some things that just aren't helpful to be seen and be modeled for these young poets that I know y'all have had to navigate through by being in more places.
I mean, in regards to poetry being therapy, poetry is definitely a therapeutic experience for me, and artistic exchange is a therapeutic experience. And poetry saved my life, hands down. It saved my life. So I see it as a tool and a coping mechanism, but it's definitely not therapy. It's a way to partner, or to get me along, or to survive. It's like treading water instead of learning to swim. And I think that it's great to learn to tread water when you can't swim, but you should also learn to swim if you have the means and the access to do so. You should do that, because that would save your life too. Treading water will save your life, but man, swimming, you know, it's nice.
Gotta do that.
So, you know, that would be a good idea to learn to do that. In regards to adults, like grown people, they too are growing and evolving. Everything on this planet is either evolving or withering or perishing, you know. And so, and even perishing is a form of evolution, because the whole circle of life thing. So everything on this planet is evolving. And so even the adults, just because you're grown doesn't mean that you were raised. And also, just because you're older doesn't mean you're wiser. So the actions of the adults are going to always affect the perspective of the youth. But that's the world. Like, that's the world. It seems magnified because our community is very small. The poetry community is very small, and most of the poets in our cipher also teach. And now that doesn't mean that none of the poets in our cipher are irresponsible adults. No, does it? and so the reality is, a lot of public school teachers, a lot of private school teachers, a lot of professors, you know, have some very questionable behavior that is unbecoming of someone who has access to young people, and has their trust, their faith, and loyalty. Pastors, priests, come on, man. You know, that's where we at. This is where we are. You know, this is the work. This is people. It's people. So with my youth, I teach them how to observe. Like, one of the first things we learn before we write any poems in my workshop is observation. Like, being able to actively listen, actively observe, and report, like in your own creative way, like what you see around you, and interpret, right? But you can't really have an idea of how far left or how far right someone is from the way that would best feed you as a mentee, unless you first know who you are as a person and what feeds you. And what feeds you. We have to have horror stories. you know, because some people not going to believe you till they see it. It has to happen. And then we also have to have people who are great at taking notes and following instructions, because some people just to view the horror story would scare them too much to even participate. So there has to be balance. And I think just thinking and considering everything around you and being able to be honest with children is going to help them navigate that space, because there's nowhere they're going to go that there won't be jerks. They're everywhere, you know, and their peers are jerks too. Some of their peers are jerks. I was a jerk in middle school. So it's like, you have to teach them healthy coping mechanisms. It's like teaching them to fight if they're going to be bullied. You know, it's not teaching them to be violent. It's teaching them to be safe in an unsafe situation. In my opinion, that's
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I'd love to jump in on that. Yeah. Yeah, Ebony, I appreciate what you do for our youth, man. I appreciate that. And I think that's, you know, under like teaching observation first is like super fire, you know, and I think like, you know, there's different aspects that I do this when I work with young people as well. And I think the way I work with young people and the population is super different at this point, because I'm a lot more working with incarcerated youth than like youth who are like trying to sharpen their writing skills to go win slams. Which are both in the same, to be honest. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it shifts up. And I think, you know, like, look, you know, when I, again, like being like, you know, my first coming up into the scene was like 2004. I'm dating myself. But you know what I'm saying? Like back then, we all used to say, yeah, this is my therapy, because we all couldn't afford therapy. You know what I'm saying? We'd say, this is where we get it. And what's wild is before it was even codified, or at least to my knowledge, like now it's narrative therapy. And if you break down the definition of narrative therapy, it's like read a poem, discuss the poem, write your own version of the poem, and then read that poem. Like, sounds like some poetry slam to me. Like, sounds like open mic. You feel me? Like, sounds like poetry, and it is. And this form of narrative therapy is actually very, very helpful, where you can actually reclaim and reshape your own narrative. I mean, that's a powerful a tool, absolutely, and it should be coupled with healthy practices, whether it be going to therapy, whether it be like do some yoga, eat healthy, right? These are all things that poetry becomes this holistic act for me. It's like, you want to write poems, get a good night of sleep, eat a good meal, right? You want to, like, it's the same. You got to approach it with some of the same techniques that you would with anything. You have to set a table. Even your body, when you sit down to eat and take in food, doesn't just do nothing, right? 30 minutes, an hour before you're eating, your body's doing all these different things to make sure it supports whatever you're putting into it. And so having all these different practices and instilling all this different mindset, you begin to have more of a culture of poetry than an actual practice or craft of it, right? Then everything becomes an aspect of your poetry. But that's a different aspect we can go into. And I think what Ebony said is very true. I mean, like, we're all learning on the fly, and a lot of us are not educated in what we're doing because we don't have access to that education, right? I was not a great coach the first 5 years I coached. I was a terrible coach. I mean, ask a few of my youth that still love me somehow. They'll tell you, you know, we probably should have had air conditioner in that room we were practicing in. You know what I'm saying? A bottle of water would have been fire. At least one practice. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's just little things that, like, I was not doing good because I just didn't know. And I think that there's a large part of us that are jumping into this craft because we see the youth are in need. We understand that that's where I was at that point. And we try to be like, hey, if I'm here, it's better than not being.
Right.
Still so much learning and so much stuff. And, like, I wish we had like a union of like poetry educators where we can come and we can learn from each other on best practices, because we were doing it for a second and I think it's drifted away. And you know, this cool community that I'm a part of, we might be trying to bring things like that back. I don't know. But I think it's super important that we learn from each other. I mean, I know so many coaches that would benefit from sitting in a room with Ebony Payne and Dasan and just talk about, hey, how can I be a better coach? How can I work with young people who don't identify with the gender I identify with, right? How can I speak language into everything? What's the language that I'm using? Because sometimes we're just not using the correct language, and then that traumatizes somebody. That pushes somebody away, right?
Cultural competence.
Yes.
So,
you know what I'm saying? I could go on, but that's totally where I am.
No, but you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Joel, anything?
I really don't have much to say because I think you guys have said so much, and I'm just going to point out that within this short time, I've already learned so much from y'all. So thank you for all your words of wisdom, because I think it's already helping me become a better coach for sure.
Thank you for what you're doing, Joel.
Thank you for holding up the culture for the culture. For the culture.
Yeah.
You know, it's so good. Like, you have no idea how good it feels in the South when, like, the up and coming, the new people still, like, hold it down for the old heads. Like, we be like, yo, you know, like, it's a long history, and it's exciting to see you and to get to know you. So I'm happy to be here with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very important, Joel. And also, while I want to take this opportunity just to say, it's being watched. I know specifically here, one of the things that I've had a chance to be involved with is Poetry Out Loud, which is an interesting thing to be connected to watch folks go through these classics. One, watch them go through these classics in the way that they're able to bring them to life, and just to see a glimpse of what we know is possible, and they get a sense of that. The other thing is to see the way that the poems selected have kind of changed over the years. And they're starting to open, and I think within the next 5 years, that selection of poems is going to start to look real familiar to us who know a broader swath of poets, because they're and the youth are the reason why.
Yes.
We do the work that we do.
Yes.
The more that when they participate in these programs, they're like, why is it just this? Why ain't it also this? And here, this year, because it's virtual, they have the option to do it. North Carolina is going to do Poetry Out Loud and then do Poetry Ourselves, where they're going to actually hold space for young folks, for teachers to identify poets to do original works. And I think this is a shift that's happening as they're recognizing when poetic pathos goes and has the success that they had, that it reverberates. And there are folks like, we can't keep missing this, because it matters to our young folks, and we got to carve space for them. So I just wanted to shout that out, Joel. Like, it reaches. I know sometimes it don't feel like it reaches because you're in the trenches. You feel like you're in the trenches, don't. But there are folks watching. There are folks watching, and they're seeing all of y'all. I'm pretty sure if you haven't heard, there's somebody having a conversation about the work you're doing right now somewhere. Because it does reach, because you can just see it in the way that these young folks move. And then, of course, y'all all know, whenever you're offered an opportunity to bring those young folks into other spaces to share, like, you see the room, you see the room just be like, oh my God, like the way that they light a room on fire is just amazing. So I want to, as we start to wrap up, I just want to talk about, I want to close on that, like, as folks who've seen, we talked about what we brought up, Nick, it's hard to lose, and I don't mean necessarily winning in slam, but just to be able to put these young folks in rooms with those poems, to just close by talking a little bit about what you've seen that do for them and for the room.
Heck yeah. I freaking love that, actually. I'm sorry, I'm jumping out of turn. My bad. No, it was just, I had a moment like that last night, actually. So the organization that I work with, Street Poets Inc., they're really, really cool, actually. And so much of their work is based around healing. Our like catchphrases, be heard, be healed. It's so corny, but it's so true. I love it. It's great. Okay. But there was one young man last night, and we were actually at a protest in front of City Hall. And it was really beautiful, and we had these moments where some of us could have spoke, and so I went up to him. I was like, "Bro, you gotta spit." He's like, "Man, I don't think I got anything appropriate." I was like, "Bro, everything you got is appropriate. The personal is political. You are in this." He's like, "Okay, bet." And he just went up and he started spitting his piece, and then kind of went into it, and there was drummers behind it, and then the drummers just started dropping the beat, and then the poem fit perfect over the beat, and he started rapping, and it was just this beautiful moment that like literally the energy in the audience was just like it palpably changed. Like everybody woke up. It was like we all got a shot of coffee. And I see that so much. I saw that there with him, but I see that with youth all the time. This ability to have a youth wake up in a way that you didn't think possible. We've had kids that were incarcerated for 9, 10, 12 months at a time, that in that time 9 to 12 months did not say a word, like not like nothing, not hello, not my name, like literally wouldn't say a word, would get in trouble for not talking. And then we come into a room and have them write for 10 minutes, and then they don't shut up. And I mean, you see the POs sticking their heads out the office. You see people, what happened? What's he doing? Is he talking? Like, and you see these youth really just coming into themselves. My favorite thing is just hearing a young person be like, "Wow, I didn't know I could do that." Like that was really wild. Like, and all of these things sound and seem cliche, but they're the most brilliant and powerful thing in these moments. To give a young person a chance to reclaim their own voice, to reclaim their own story. It's a powerful thing. I mean, we see it in politics. We see it in across the world. When a young person speaks, the world stops and listens. And I will never get used to that.
I know for me, it's all about watching my students grow. Like I used to call the youth from Jacksonville Shattered Thought Team Titans, right? Like I saw them grow, like to be these massive beings that were unstoppable. Nothing could stop them. Nothing could touch them at all. And they were doing that through their own words and through their own, telling their own truths, telling their own stories, watching teenagers be honest and grow in sapient stature on a stage, like that will never ever get old. It's the human experience, like just observing that to see someone do the unimaginable to them, like something that they really could not even imagine, to see them do it, to see their dreams come true, like right in front of you, like that. I mean, that's why people teach.
Yeah.
Because the pay sucks. But I mean, like, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to see someone's dreams come true, and that be your daily. There's nothing like it.
Yeah.
Hey, Joel, anything to close out?
I just, like she says, like the ultimate high, just seeing that success, seeing that growth. I remember the first time I had my poet perform on Curiosity, and like it literally brought tears to my eyes. I was like, oh my God, because this is a poet who would cry the first time that they shared a poem in class. And to go from that to performing in front of 500 people on the stage, they stuttered a bit, but they overcame that situation, spoke their truth about coming out. It was just the best experience. And I'll remember it for the rest of my life for sure.
Thank y'all so much, man. That's our time. It's been a wonderful conversation with y'all. And I hope everybody who's watching, man, all of these folks, man, just send all kinds of love virtually so they can feel it in the universe, man. It's been a pleasure. I love all of y'all. Joel, we got to talk more, man. Thank you.
Guys. Great meeting everybody. Thank you.
Real quick. Please, guys, in the comment box, please show y'all love for our moderator, Dasan Ahanu, and our panelists, Ebony Payne, English, Joel Mayo, and Matthew Cuban Hernandez. Especially Matthew, because he is doing this all the way from California, so I know there's a 3-hour time difference. So I am definitely appreciative of him being here. These
It's
are
okay. Y'all can't
phenomenally.
smell my morning breath, so it's all good.
These are phenomenally great artists, but they're also friends and they're also family to me and a lot of people in the poetry community for everything that they do. Please get their information. Guys, if you can, if you're on Facebook, and this is to the panelists and the moderator, leave your information, how they can find you guys on any of the social media platforms, so that way they can follow you. As everybody is, as we're winding this down, please give us 15 minutes, because in 15 minutes we will be starting up our youth open mic. So give us 15 minutes and we will be right back with our youth open mic. But once again, thank you, Dasan Ahanu. Thank you, Ebony Payne English. Thank you, Joel Mayo. And thank you, Matthew Cuban Hernandez, for an awesome damn panel. I'm appreciative of y'all. Thank y'all so much. And we will see y'all in 15 minutes for the youth open mic. Take care, guys.
Love y'all.
Thank you.